All right. Hello, everyone. I'm here with Chris Powers, who is a rock star member of the TFF community. He attended the TFF Summit. Some of you guys might have gotten to know him. Um, and he's a sales executive. Is that right, Chris?
Yeah.
At Henkel. And he's also an entrepreneur who's working on his own startup called Wild Growth, which specifically helps to promote startups in building their sales and pipeline in the urban agriculture space. So if you can hear me, I think right now we have Mashida and Brennan on board. You can say hi in the chat, and we'll just make sure that you guys can hear me okay. Let's see if that goes through. And while we wait for that, Chris, do you want to give a little bit more of an introduction to yourself?
Yeah, sure. Let's see if these guys can figure out the chat. I think everyone, if you're using Google Hangouts, yeah, you need to go to the left section that says webinars on air, I think. There we go. Here we go. We got some
there you go, guys.
engagement going on.
Sweet.
So yeah, currently I work for a large chemical company doing medium to large account sales. I start out in a leadership rotation program where I worked in 10 different business units the first year. And now I'm focused on helping early stage companies to build their sales and marketing strategies.
Awesome. Cool. So we're excited to have Chris share some of his knowledge and expertise. And he wants to keep this fairly interactive. So throughout, he'll be asking some questions. Please ask any questions you have through the chat or through the question button. Yeah, he'll provide some direct feedback. After the webinar is over, you can stick around as well, and we'll open it up and maybe even get you guys to be able to speak one-on-one with Chris to get some pretty specific feedback on your startup and on what you're hoping to accomplish. So with that, Chris, are you ready to start? Want to say anything else here?
No, absolutely. I'm ready to jump right in. We've got a lot to go over here in the next hour or so we'll move.
Sweet. Let's do that.
And let's see here. So now, do I share my screen this way?
Yep. Yep. And then I'll turn you over to present.
Great.
There you go.
Okay, let's just make sure this works. All right, great. Yeah, thanks again, Jared, for having me. And so from here, guys, I'd like to teach you about the title of my presentation, How to Sell High-Value Products. So let's dive right in. Nothing happens until someone sells something is a quote from Thomas Watson, former CEO and chairman of IBM. So after you guys have an idea and maybe you've raised a little capital, now you have to begin jumping into acquiring revenue. Every business has 5 elements: value creation, sales marketing, value delivery, and finance. Without any one of these elements, it's not a business. So a lot of what I saw at the TFF Summit was the value creation piece and maybe a little bit of marketing. But I didn't see a lot of people who had done direct sales yet. So I thought it would be a great opportunity to get involved with the community and share a little bit of what I know based on my few years experience in large account sales. Couple housekeeping things really quick. How to get the most out of this webinar. A few things. First, I want you to set a calendar reminder in Google Calendars or iCal, whatever you use, to review this material in 3 months, 6 months, and a year. I think, like reading a good book, this webinar will take on new value and new dimensions as you continue to grow your business. At least that's how I tried to design it. Second, treat this webinar like something that you've paid for. So, I didn't just kind of throw this together haphazardly. I took years of experience and probably be about 10 hours just going back through some of my favorite books on sales, doing some research, and really trying to put this together for your benefit. So as we're going to be talking about buyer psychology, I would be remiss in telling you, in not explaining that people only value things that they pay for, right? If you have an expensive pair of sunglasses and someone steps on them, you get sad. If you get a free pair of sunglasses and they fly off your face, you don't care. So really kind of, you know, treat this like something you paid for and value it. And then next, I'd say immediately go out and apply some of these principles that I'm going to be teaching you right after the training to your business, and then email me and let me know how it went. I'm happy to be in touch via email to hold you accountable and answer any questions that you might have. I think this webinar will also warrant a rewatch because there's a lot of principles that take a lot of practice to master. So now you might be asking, what if I sell B2C, right? What if I don't sell high value products? Or if I sell low value products B2B? A lot of the principles that I'll be teaching you about are from a skill set called value selling, which essentially means, you know, selling high value products. Value selling comes into play when you're selling something to someone, and when they buy it, it's a significant portion of their revenue is going into buying that solution. So value selling is a complex skill set because you're dealing with companies and you're solving problems that are critical to someone else's business. Now, a lot of the things I'm going to be talking about relating directly to buyer and seller psychology are going to be applicable in the B2C space as well. So don't close the webinar right away. I say sit through it, and if you have any more questions related specifically to B2C, I'm happy to answer. The second thing is when it comes to pitching investors, or if you are a B2C company, eventually you will probably need high value partnerships, right? Like contract manufacturers or people to do labeling for you, etc. So you will have to engage some high value partners in a B2B style process. So that is where value selling will come in handy. So without further ado, I guess, are there any questions before we get started? Okay, I don't see any in the chat, so we'll just go from there. How to sell high value products. Here's our strategy at the glance, and it's a little bit counterintuitive, but I want to start by sharing 3 key mindsets as it relates to sales, because sales is very much a psychological endeavor. And then I'm going to challenge you to understand better what you're selling. And then really, I guess the secret to value selling, the art and science, is to first dollarize problems and then provide solutions. So first, I kind of want to ask, what's the first thing you think about when you hear about sales or salespeople? Any words come to mind that you can type into the chat? Okay, car salesman. Anyone else? We've got Jared here. Okay, Brennan says pushy, right? Like they're always trying to sort of pressure you into buying something. A few other words that come to mind for me typically are kind of like infomercials, right? Scammy, sleazy. They're using pressure tactics. Yeah, boring. Sometimes if they're really bad at selling, they just drone on and they don't have much personality. Okay, and you can see in the background, this is a clip from the movie Glengarry Glen Ross. This guy is a sales trainer, and he's saying, always be closing. In this, if you guys Google always be closing, Alec Baldwin, it's a great video. on sales training and sort of what not to do, in my opinion. Oh, sorry about that. I just minimized my window. All right. So what I want to try to convince you guys of is that this is actually completely wrong. So there we go. Okay, so when you're trying to sell high value products, pressure tactics, being pushy, getting people to make impulse buys, being loud and rude, those things don't work, especially when you're talking about trying to have someone like the owner of a big company or an investor put some serious money on the line. So that's where psychology really becomes key when it comes to selling, because if you're trying to convince someone or you're trying to help them, there are some things to keep in mind. Your behaviors do actually play a huge role in your ability to succeed. For a little more on this, you'll want to check out the book Spin Selling. There's a lot of really interesting research on related specifically to sales behaviors and their influence on successful outcomes. So 3 things to think about. Selling is a learned skill. Don't be afraid to fail. This process will take time as you learn. So just kind of keep pushing forward and you'll get better and better with time. Second, because you guys are a mission-driven organization, I would say reframe the conversation. The more products I sell, the more people I can help. I think what you guys are doing with Thought for Food is wonderful, so I'd like to see all of your companies succeed. And lastly, you want to sell from a place of high integrity, also known as the strategy of preeminence by Jay Abraham. Now, I think this strategy is so important that I'm going to take a quick second to dive deep into it, and then you can always Google Jay Abraham's preeminence video for a little bit more depth. But basically what it comes down to is that if you're selling a product or a service, you really want to become the guardian of whoever you're selling to, even if it comes at your own expense. So I can't say that enough. Do the right thing, be ethical when you're selling, and put the interest of your clients before your own interests. Sorry, I'm juggling windows here. This will do a few things. So first of all, in the age of the internet and the age of extreme connectivity, it's very hard to cheat your way to the top nowadays. So if you're being like the scammy car salesman, you might be able to get someone to sign on the dotted line by pressuring them, but that's not going to work out for long. So you want to make sure that you protect the person that you're selling to, and as you get to know them and as you begin to work with them and see if you can find solutions to their problem and empathize with their pains or understand their hopes, right, or their dreams, if you want to deliver on that promise that your company makes, then you have to have your client or your customer at the center of your world and make sure to do right by them. A lot of times when I'm selling, just to give you an indication of the power of this strategy, sometimes people will get really excited about a solution that I can offer, and they start saying, yeah, I want to buy that thing, right? And maybe that thing is expensive. And maybe it's not the right thing for them. So in the short term, I could make more money by just piling on all the sales that I could. But in the long term, I want to become not a salesperson, but a trusted advisor for my client or for my customer. So if they want to buy something or if they buy the wrong thing, I'll go back and say, no, I'm happy that you want to buy from me, Mr. Client, but actually, you should maybe look elsewhere, or maybe a competitive solution would be better for what your process is, or maybe you should buy this cheaper piece of equipment that will help you get up and running and help you move forward. So, a subtle shift happens when you begin to put your client at the center of your world, and it is that they begin to trust you more than anything else. And I think in sales, the most difficult asset to earn is actually trust. So keep that at the forefront. I'm trying to Hold on. There we go. Okay, so I can see the chat in this window at the same time. All right, sorry for the interruption. So keep that at the center of your mind whenever you're selling, and you'll avoid being like that used car salesman type of person. One great example that Jay Abraham shares on the strategy of preeminence is he talks about being a water salesman. And he says, you know, if I know that my client needs 8 glasses of water per day and they come in and try to buy 4 only, I can sell them unapologetically to buy 8. I can educate them on the health benefits of 8 glasses of water versus 4. I can show them research studies. I can do this, I can do that. But if a customer comes in to buy, say, for example, 16 glasses of water, then you also have to work equally hard to educate them and say, you know, I appreciate your business. I know that I can make more money if you buy 16, but 16 is not really the number you want. It's 8. And even going so far as to not sell your client 16 glasses of water if 8's the right number. So that's just one story or one example that sort of, I think, makes this principle concrete. So again, you want to put your client or your customer at the center of everything you do, and you know, you can avoid feeling bad about the selling process. So now, let me ask everyone in the chat a question. What are you in the business of selling? Any feedback? Deep thoughts? Okay. So from Brennan, I see Farm Solutions. The question might be a little bit confusing. So my question back to that is, you know, what are Farm Solutions? I have no idea. I have no idea what I sell. Okay, there we go. This is why I asked the question in the first place. So currently at my day job, let me explain this a little further. Currently at my day job, I sell adhesives, right? Glue, chemicals that stick things together. But really, that's not what I sell, right? That's a description of the product maybe, but when I'm in talking to clients, I'm talking about things like process improvement, reducing downtime, how to help them grow their business. So that leads us to a discussion then of features versus benefits, right? A feature is what a product does, right? The size, the color, maybe in some cases, you know, it's like a tea or a noodle or something like that, right? A benefit describes what a product does or the advantages specific to the client or consumer. Some examples include pain relief, helping someone make more money, maybe giving someone status if it's a luxury good, etc. So the mistake a lot of people make very often is they rattle off features when really the thing that people who are in a buying position care about is the benefits. Now, we'll do a little more of a deep dive into this later, but here's an example if we're talking about like a basic soda, right? So some features, you can say, hey, the can's made of aluminum. It's 3 inches in circumference. And then the rim's near the top, right? Why do we care about these things? Well, if you look at the benefits that correspond to those features, you can see, okay, if it's made of aluminum, the drink stays colder and it's also recyclable, right? The circumference relates to the beverage fitting into your hand, and so on. So then let me ask you, about this example? What about a luxury watch? Can you think about what the features would be and what the benefits would be of something like this? So why would someone buy a solid gold watch? Right? Okay, features. I'm seeing from Brennan, telling time. Yes, absolutely. So with a $10 watch, the benefit is that you can tell time. Maybe it has a calculator. Maybe it can do a lot of things. Okay, I'm seeing feature made of gold and high quality material. Okay. That one, in some ways, I would actually consider to be a little bit in the benefits statement. If you buy a solid gold watch, the feature is that, yes, it happens to function as a timepiece. But the main benefit is that it's a status and power symbol. So when you buy a watch that costs many more times as much money as someone else's car, that signals to other people that first, you have that amount of money and you're the kind of person who can afford those kinds of luxury goods. So Rolex doesn't sell timepieces per se. They sell the prestige that comes along with it. The same would be true with Chanel No. 5, which retails for $5,000 a gallon, right? It's not that Chanel No. 5 is that much or that many times better than any other perfume. It's that if you're the kind of person who wears Chanel No. 5, then there are certain status symbols that go along with that, and that's why they fetch the premium that they do. So as you're crafting your hook and beginning to learn how to sell your product or service to people, you want to actually be thinking about the benefit statement as it pertains to your customer or your client. So what will they actually get if they buy your product? So I'll maybe address this further in the Q&A section. Let's see here. Yeah, I'll address this further in the Q&A section if you want to brainstorm a little bit about the features versus benefits of your specific offering. But just kind of take some time and think about that, because it's really important to understanding why your prospect would actually buy what you're selling. So the next two parts that I'm going to cover in depth are really the backbone of value selling. And first step is to dollarize problems or find needs at your client. And then the second is to try to provide them with a solution to those problems. So at the end of the day, even though business is about creating value, it's all about moving money. So in value selling, right, when you're selling to an account where their purchase of your product is a significant share of the revenue that they bring in, and where mistakes in them buying your product could potentially bankrupt their business, features are irrelevant. So the fact that a product is blue versus red typically doesn't matter. What really matters are the core benefits of the product. And when you're selling B2B, there's really only two things that matter most. You're either going to help your client achieve one of two outcomes. You're either going to help them to make more money. So that could be increased revenue, increased brand recognition, increased reach, or bring new products to market, to name a few. Or you can help the business to save money. So you can help them cut costs. You can help them to avoid downtime. Help them, if you're thinking about it from an HR perspective, you could be a consultant who helps increase employee retention, because employee churn is really expensive. In a manufacturing environment, you could reduce a number of different problems as well, work in process, etc. So even though you're thinking about the specific benefits and how you can market your product, at the end of the day, if you're selling to a large company, it's going to come down to one of these two things, because eventually, even the CEO of a company is responsible to shareholders. And what do shareholders care about? They only care about money, right? They only care about increasing the cash position of the company. So when you kind of boil it down, if you can frame your offer so that it helps someone make more money or saves them money in some capacity, those are the kinds of projects that you want to focus on. So now the question is, how do you do that? How do you think you could identify opportunities that would either increase profits or decrease losses? The answer to that, in my experience, is you want to ask questions. So during the dollarization process, this is really your fact-finding stage of the sales cycle. So you'll want to go in, if you're going to send a proposal to a client, or you think there's someone that you want to work with, you want to ask open-ended questions about their business and see how you can help. A few of them you could say are, what are your goals? What are you trying to achieve on this project? Maybe if they brought you in to solve a problem, right? What are some problems that you have? How much do those problems cost? And then you can really do a deep dive into cost, because very often your prospect doesn't know what the actual cost is. So for example, in a manufacturing environment, you could ask, what's your scrap rate? What's your work in process, which is the amount of time that parts need to spend on the floor before they can ship. You can ask, do you have any source of downtime, any lost hours, inefficiencies, safety issues, things that can go bad. So as you get to know your clients or your prospects much better, you'll be able to ask better and better questions to determine the true cost. One story, I guess, from my experience in sales, I won't share any specific details because there are NDAs in play, but I got called into an all-hands meeting recently for a large equipment manufacturer, and I was sitting around a table with a bunch of engineers and production people, and they said, hey, we have a huge problem on our hands. And as it turned out, there was a particular failure that was happening in this large piece of equipment, and they had to go out and service these pieces of equipment in the field and make field repairs. So they said, hey, we have a huge problem. And then I started going down the road. Okay, when you have one of these failures, how much does that cost? Oh, they said, I don't know. So then we started going through it. Okay, what's a repair cost? Well, it costs $20,000, right? What does it cost in terms of legal expenses? Do you ever have any lawyers get involved in this process? Oh, yeah. Yeah, whenever, this equipment breaks down, the job becomes late, and then, oftentimes we face chargebacks, right? What's the value of that chargeback? Maybe a few $100,000, they said. And as we kept going down this road, kept asking questions about every single facet of the process and how it was costing the client money, as it turned out, they didn't know it, but they had a multi-million-dollar problem on their hands. So, a lot of times people don't know how bad their situation can be until you really, really turn the screw and dig in and keep on peeling back the onion layers to find out what's going on, right? So then, okay, they have a multi-million-dollar problem, and as it just so happened, our company had a solution. So then, if they have a multi-million-dollar problem, what do you think I can charge for that solution? The answer in short is a lot of money, right? Now, as it turns out, we ended up having something that was off the shelf that was not that expensive. So that was a huge cost savings to them. But if we had to formulate a custom solution, we could have done that at an extremely high premium. And so when you're selling high value products, if you can find really huge problems to solve and a lot of pain or bottlenecks at a customer that you can unlock, then that's where you're really going to make the most money and the most profits. So the other aspect of this I want to cover as well that's just as critical for you and your business is that dollarizing problems also means dollarizing opportunities for yourself and for your company. So in that story that I gave, right, if they're facing a multi-million-dollar problem, the probability that they're going to buy that solution is very high. And the probability that I can charge a premium for that solution is also very high. So as an individual focused on sales, that's where I want to focus my time. The reason for this being, it probably takes just as much time to focus on many small opportunities as it does to focus on many big opportunities. So I would say that the amount of time that you spend in your business trying to close a gigantic deal is not directly proportional to the size of the deal. So what I mean by that is I could spend, let's say, the same amount of time working on 10 $10,000 projects as I could working on 10 $100,000 projects. So the question then is, where do I want to focus my time? I obviously want to have my investment in my time and my energy focused on the places that are going to move the needle for my business. So when you dollarize problems at the account level and you identify opportunities for yourself and your business, from a pipeline perspective, you want to make sure to focus on the places where you're really going to make money. So typically large opportunities don't carry that much time premium with them. So the next thing that you want to consider as well is that when you don't dollarize problems or you don't figure out the true pain or benefit to your client, then you can end up going down the wrong road as well. I can't tell you how many times early in my sales career I would not follow the principles of dollarizing problems, find a solution, and then I would end up getting punished for that by wasting time. Because at the end of the day, again, it all comes down to helping someone make more money or helping them save money. What's up, guys?
Sorry, guys, not sure what just happened there. Do you want to go back to presentation mode, Chris?
Yeah, that's cool. So where
Okay.
did I get dropped at?
Cool. I think it just, for some reason, I think right there, the problems start when you don't do this. But Brendan or Machida, did you lose him at some other point? Oops, not sure what's going on.
It's okay. This is our first webinar. We can work out some technical details.
Well, we're working out the kinks. Okay.
All right, great.
Okay, why don't you just pick up where we left off, Chris?
Yeah, so I don't know how long I was talking with no one listening, but essentially, my point here is that when you go down the road of dollarizing problems or opportunities with your client, it also saves you from a lot of heartache and a lot of wasting time. Anytime I haven't gone down this road, I've gotten burned by spinning my wheels on a project that sounded like an awesome opportunity, but then only to get in and realize that the person was never going to buy to begin with. Especially as an early stage company, time is your most precious asset, so you can't afford to waste too much of it on unqualified projects. I'll actually be heading to Connecticut in a little bit for a week-long training about qualifying opportunities. So it is a fairly complex skill set, but you just want to know that whenever you figure out how you can help your client make more money or save more money, then that's a well-qualified opportunity. You can kind of move to the next stage. But if you don't, then problems arise. And again, the last point here is, if you want to be a true guardian for your client, it's your responsibility to understand how you can help them, right? You want to understand their hopes, fears, dreams, and desires. You want to understand how you can help, or how your solution can help their company to make more money or to save more money. And if you're not doing that, you're not selling responsibly, and you're probably wasting not only your time, but also the time of your prospect as well. So after the presentation, I'll share some of my favorite resources to give you guys a little bit more of a structured framework on how to ask questions and understand the value that you're actually bringing to your clients. So then, after you've dollarized a given problem, then it's time to provide a solution. So any ideas here? What would happen? What happens at this stage? This is sort of the last part of the sales process. A lot of people think it's the first though, right? So the car salesman says, hey, buy this red car. The person on the home shopping network says, hey, buy this slap chop, right? But when you're value selling, the providing a solution part actually comes after a great deal of listening, fact finding, dollarizing problems, and then you can come out with a solution. So when you do provide a solution to a prospect, basically one of three things is going to happen, right? Either your solution is going to be way too expensive, your solution will be break even, so whatever you provide to them will cost just about as much as their current situation, or your solution will be cost justified. So after you go through the process of dollarizing, right, the only opportunities you want to focus on are the very last ones, where your solution is cost justified, right? If your solution costs too much, you're going to get laughed out of the room, and people are going to say, I don't have that kind of money, or it's just not a good fit for me right now, or it's way too expensive, right? Your solution is break even, okay? There are actually costs and hidden risks associated with moving to a new solution. So your prospect is not going to be interested probably in a break-even solution. If one is just as good as the other, especially if it's something that's critical to their business processes, they're not going to be motivated to change. And then in the last point, if your solution is a huge windfall for them personally, right? If it helps them gain more status within the organization, if it helps them meet their numbers to their shareholders, if it helps the manufacturing plant make more money, if it helps, a bank increase profits, whatever it may be, if your solution costs less than the problem or opens up a larger opportunity than its cost, then it's a no-brainer at that point. And if your solution is cost justified and someone thinks it's too expensive, that's where, again, the dollarization process, I can't harp on this enough, becomes important. Because if you sell an expensive, high-value product and it's cost justified, your prospect may still say, hey, this thing's too expensive for me. I can't buy this. It's $100,000. But if you can show them on paper that they spend $100,000 and make $500,000 or $1 million, then it's a lot easier for them to pull the trigger on buying what you have to sell. If you prefer pictures, you want to think of it like this. If the cost is the green square and the problem is the red square, you only want to be solving problems that are basically bigger than the cost of the solution that you're providing. And then from there, I would say that the selling process becomes very easy, because once you've identified a problem and you've really kind of held your prospect by the hand and showed them that your solution will help them to make more money, then all you have to do is deliver at that point. And you don't have to, resort to pressure techniques. You don't have to do all this psychological manipulation garbage. It's just like, hey, this is good for you. It's good for me. Let's move forward. And then from an operations perspective, sometimes this is easier said than done at an earlier stage company, but then all you have to do is deliver. So again, we'll make a little recap here. A few things that we went over today was 3 key mindsets in developing your selling skills. How to understand what you're selling. So we talked a little bit about features versus benefits there. We went a little bit in depth into how to dollarize problems and how it's important not only for protecting your company and your client, but also for identifying the big opportunities for you to go after. And then also a little bit about how to find that needs payoff and provide a solution that is cost justified. So with that, we're a little bit ahead of schedule. I'll say take the next step. If you go to my website, wildgrowth.org/TFF, and opt in there, I'll email you a comprehensive list of all the research that I use for this webinar, as well as a lot of my favorite books, articles, and resources that I think are just really phenomenal for learning how to sell for the first time. And then if you have any questions, feel free to keep in touch with me. You can get my information from Jared, or email me at chris@wildgrowth.org, and I'll be here to help. So with that, we're a little bit ahead of schedule. We kind of flew through it a little bit, but I just wanted to open this up to any questions that you guys might have related to your specific business. And, maybe we can brainstorm ideas or, go through anything like that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. Great job. Let me stop you there so we can see you. But yeah, really some good stuff. I really liked how you kind of framed and walked through changing the mindset from you need to buy this to how can we help you. And I think for me that was kind of the big takeaway. And the more you can show like this is how. Yeah, I like that. So thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
How do you want to do this? Brennan, shoot additions at your chat. I'll let you think through those. If we want, we can bring you online and you can talk face to face with us if you would like to do that. So if so, you can just ask to be brought into the Hangout.
Okay. Here we go. Brennan, if you're a young person trying to sell to someone older, do you think that's a strength or a weakness? Sounds like you might have a specific situation, Brennan, that you're thinking about. I'll tell you a story. When I first started in sales, I had people telling me things, because I had a little bit of a baby face, people telling me things like, hey, Chris, what did you do before this career? High school? You know what I mean? Like, is your mom going to drop you off or, pick you up from like this thing or whatever? So I would say, especially in a really established industry, I remember your project, Pharma Field. Yeah, a lot of 65-year-old farmers. So, guys who have been in the industry probably longer right, than your parents have been alive, or maybe as long as your parents have been alive. So what I would say to that is it might feel a little bit awkward at first. We have some other questions rolling in. All right, it might feel a little bit awkward at first, but if you can just authentically convey the fact that you have your client's best interest in mind, they will listen to you. And there have been times when, you know, as a 25-year-old, I was in a power meeting with some very high-level people at some of the companies I was calling on, many of them old enough to be my dad. And there's this kind of process of like kind of trying to feel me out and or testing me or throwing me some bullshit. But then, you know, if you just come in and you establish yourself as the adult in the room and someone throws something like that at you, you just look at them, you don't respond, and you just continue with the process, right? So if you can learn how to carry yourself with high integrity and just ignore them saying like, oh, you know, what, you're too young or whatever. Once you establish yourself as someone who's credible and who can really solve problems, they'll be happy to work with you. And if they're not, quite frankly, they're ignorant and their business is probably going to fail. So that's what I'd say about that.
Yeah, and just to follow up with that before we get to Mashida's question, I'm curious, Chris, like, so maybe in Brennan's case, in PharmaField's case, they can help show, like, and Brennan, correct me if I'm wrong, but they can show, like, this is how much money you're spending, and if you move to our solution, we can help you. We can help you save money and optimize your process. But then maybe a question is, how do you make that first sale to prove that you can deliver? Is there a strategy for that?
Yeah, so I think the challenge you'll run into as an early stage company is kind of like a chicken and the egg thing, right? Where it's like, if you haven't delivered, then how can you deliver? So then I think you might want to try to go after maybe smaller farmers, right? Because I would imagine that someone's willingness to participate is going to be directly proportional to their risk. So one thing that I did when I was starting to learn how to sell is I just knocked on every single door and I went to everyone. It didn't matter how big or how small, right? Because the small guys taught me subtle lessons about selling that applied to when I was in the room with the big guys. So even though you want to prioritize your opportunities based on how large they are, it may be easier to land a couple of smaller clients just to work out the kinks, and then demonstrate those results from the smaller clients and ask if they're okay with you sharing their numbers, and then say, hey, this worked on a scale of X. Your farm is 10X. Here's what the cost savings would be if we scaled it up, and we've delivered for person X, Y, and Z.
Cool.
So that's sort of how I'd go about it. First land, a successful client, and then, share their story with others.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
So Mashida sent through a question, which was how to convince the customer to buy our product if it's too expensive.
If it's too expensive, okay. So higher than our first calculation. I remember this product. So I think too expensive, I think, is fiction. So what benefits does your noodle have that others don't? You know what I mean? Is it vitamin enriched? Is it handcrafted? Right? So the problem I think you might be facing is that if you're trying to position your product against a regular run-of-the-mill noodle and yours is twice as expensive, yeah, they're probably not going to buy it. But if you say, hey, you know what? These noodles are high quality, they're fresh, they're handcrafted, then you begin selling it as a little bit more of a premium or luxury good at first, right? for affluent people like yuppies, or you know, a yuppie is like someone who's young and making a lot of money and single, right? So, you know, maybe it's like a yuppie noodle, right? Where, you know, they want like a little bit more nutrition, or they want to feel like they're eating healthy even when they're having an instant noodle. So I'm happy to do a much deeper dive on this question. This pertains a little more to marketing and would be more related to product positioning. But you know, I would say you could just hustle at first and get your first few paying customers by just selling them face to face on it, and then get their feedback and see what they like and what they don't, and then use that to inform your retail launch. What scale is your business at? If you're making these noodles manually, how many how many packages are you selling like per month? Because I remember initially the strategy was to basically have a lower cost, more nutritional noodle, and then scale it out to a bunch of bodegas, right, and a bunch of convenience stores, and then sell it against traditional noodles. But I think your strategy might have to change in the short term if you're facing cost overruns.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll wait to hear back on that.
Yeah. So in the meantime, as we wait and see if there's any more questions from you guys, I have one for you, Chris.
Yeah.
So we talked a lot about like the B2B, business to business sales, and you mentioned this could be applied in a lot of cases to B2C sales as well.
Yeah.
Do you have, so is there, I guess my first question is, how do you qualify like a target? So in B2B, like you mentioned this a little bit, but is there something you're looking for as like a target person I want to try to sell to you, or I want to try to see how I can help you? And how is that different than a B2C sale where that's more, you're trying to find like a target market fit?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I would say on the high dollar, high stakes B2B atmosphere, it's a little bit less easy to come up with like what you'd call a customer avatar or like a target market, because the needs of each business vary so widely, which is why I think it's still valuable to have salespeople in the field or sell face-to-face for that kind of transaction. I would say that the part that translates is understanding buyer psychology. So understanding that people don't care about features, they only care about benefits, and that people are fundamentally self-interested. So when you take it to more of a B2C level, there's a few more things that people might buy, right? Core human drives have been the same for the last 10,000 years. They probably want to get more fit, become more well-liked. They probably want to make more money, have more status, have more power, right? These people probably want to be up on the newest technology. There's like 17 or 18 things that have not really changed very much in human nature. And if you can tie those psychological triggers to your product and then provide it at a price point that makes sense for your audience, then that kind of will help you to position your B2C product, if that makes sense. But that is kind of more of a question of marketing or positioning, I think, than anything.
Cool.
So yeah, I think it, again, I think sales is all about radical empathy and understanding the hopes, fears, dreams, and desires of the people that you're selling to. And then once you have that unlock, it's a lot easier to market or sell to someone. And then that's where you get into some ethical considerations, which is once you understand your prospect better than they understand themselves, you have to really, I think, do business with integrity to make sure that you're not being manipulative. But that's kind of just my viewpoint. Not everyone sees the world that way. Okay. Does that answer your question, I guess, on?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so we haven't sold any. We just started last week. Okay, so I guess going back to the question on, you know, selling some of these noodles, I would say, you know, try selling to people face to face. Like, just get out there and hustle a little bit and collect live feedback, because you know, one thing that I find really valuable in the sales process is when I'm selling to someone, I'll take note of the actual words that they use to describe what they like about my solution. And then next time I'm in a meeting talking to someone, I can use those exact words, sort of straight from the horse's mouth, to sell effectively to that customer avatar. So if it's an engineer and they're saying, hey, I really like XYZ technical aspect of the product, if I'm selling to another engineer, I'll say that exact same line basically, and they love it because it's something that they said. So I think that really just hustling and getting out there and saying, hey, we have this product for sale, and positioning it as a premium good, I bet you could get your friends and family to buy a package of noodles today. Like, after this webinar, that's my challenge to you. Like, sell one. Don't try to sell at scale right now. Just sell one and email me about it. And I want to hear back from you either today or next week. And my challenge is sell one pack of noodles to somebody that you know and see what they think. And then do it again and again and again. And eventually you'll be able to scale that way. Let's see. What about lots of sales? Brennan says, what about lots of sales? Are there ways to build this in a way that you can have a high level of sales without a conversation each time? Yeah, definitely. I think you can, and that's something that you should think about starting to build. So I think what you're talking about, Brennan, is a sales process, right? Like a funnel or marketing or some type of automation in order to make it so that your prospects convert into paying customers automatically, like with software products. I think that you definitely can, and I can share some resources with you on you know, sales funnels, marketing, conversion, things of that nature. But you want to make sure that you build the bedrock of your business on those things that initially don't scale. So I think the hard thing that you're going to find is that you're selling to a customer base that is generally not very tech savvy. And in fact, if they're farmers, they're probably fairly dubious of technology in general. So yeah, you're going to have to really, I think in the startup, okay, just a brief rant here. I think in the startup, like, tech bro world, like, the idea of scale is just way overrated or overblown. Everyone's saying, like, scale this, scale that. You have to, like, you know, do things that scale. But a lot of more savvy VCs and startup entrepreneurs say it's important to do things that don't scale first. So that hard thing, that getting over that first hump, that making your first sale is seems deceptively simple, but the feedback that you get from a phone conversation is infinitely more valuable than feedback you would get from an email. And that, you know, there's a lot of really big businesses, like, we're talking huge corporations with a high level of automation, that still get on the phone or still do live customer interviews, right? Procter & Gamble is a perfect example. They send people door to door to, you know, a housewife's home to see how they interact with their cleaning products, to see how they could make them better. So yeah, I think, you know, there's a lot of value in automation and systematizing, but don't put the cart before the horse. If you apply an efficient system to an ineffective business, it'll look cool, but it won't sell. So a little bit of a rant there, but I think it's important to first understand the value you bring and make those first sales, and then you can automate a process that works. Does that make sense? Okay. So we have challenge accepted. She's going to go sell some noodles. Yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah, I think,
Cool.
yeah, I just think it's making your first sale is a super valuable process. And a lot of early stage companies and a lot of people kind of tend to hand wave or whitewash over that process. And I think, you know, that's a mistake. So get after it.
Awesome. Well, if there's any last minute questions, send them in now. Otherwise, make sure you sign up for courses from Chris. What was that website again, Chris, that they can go to?
Right here. And also, it is a great way to keep in touch with me. And, you know, so again, that should work. If not, you can just opt in to my anywhere on my site, and I'll see your name and I'll send you some stuff. You know, the sales process is a pretty nuanced and complex skill set. So I don't expect all the questions to really be over after this webinar, which is why I've kind of offered to stay in touch via email, you know, have you guys watch the webinar over again. But then really, you know, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm willing to be a little bit of a mentor for this community. And then, you know, if you want, you can even give me a call, maybe real quick for 30 minutes, you know, every once in a while. And we can just kind of walk through exactly, you know, some of the things that you're hearing from your customers, exactly what your sales process looks like. And then, you know, I can maybe make some recommendations for things you're doing well and things you could also do better in the future. So don't hesitate to reach out.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Chris. Really appreciate that. Again, if you're watching the video, it's wildgrowth.org/TFF. And remember the challenges. In the beginning, he said, look at this in 6 months, look at this in a year. And it's amazing how every time you come back and revisit some business fundamentals, you pick up new things and you realize like, oh, wow, this is something we're doing, or this is something we need to do. So thanks for joining in the webinar. Thank you, Chris. And we'll all be in touch.
Thank you for having me.
Cool. See you guys.
Bye.